Hi, cookie friends. It's Hani here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I've got something extra sweet and spooky cute for you. We're going to make bear cookies with a candy corn twist. A perfect treat for Halloween. So without further ado, let's get started with today's irresistible project. I used my classic sugar cookie recipe to bake the cookies. You also need to prepare royal icing, and we've got several colors here. Let me break those down for you. You're going to need 2 shades of tan, white, orange, yellow, black, and green. Let's start with the muzzle. That's the protruding part on the bear's face. I'm using 10 colored royal icing, and I'm making royal icing transfers. I've got my template sheet in a smooth, transparent protector sheet that I secured onto a plexiglass. First, I pipe the zigzag line in the middle. You want to make sure that you let it crust, and then you can pipe the icing on top of it. That zigzag line is going to help mitigate cratering. It's important that it's crusted when you're piping icing on top of it. After this step, let the icing crust for about 5-10 minutes, and then we can make the nose and the mouth. To make the nose, I'm using black royal icing. This is about, it can be 15 to 20 second consistency. If you're using runnier icing, make sure that you don't pile it up too much because you're going to risk cratering in your icing. And then make the mouth. I decided to use a PME 1.5 piping tip to make the mouth with piping consistency royal icing. Once these are dry, in about 8 to 12 hours, you can safely remove them from the acetate. Store them pretty much indefinitely, or you can use them for your next project. Here is my cardstock template. You guys know how much I love cardstock templates. I'm using yellow marker, tracing the guides directly on the cookie so it's easier to figure out where to pipe what. To cut the tipless piping bag, always find a seam and press it down the middle and then cut a straight line across. Then you can use your fingers to shape the opening if it got a little too flat when you pressed it down. I'm piping zigzag lines also in these sections because these are more prone to cratering, and I'm going to let those crust while I make the candy corn design. So I'm starting with yellow icing. It's about 15-second consistency. I don't know about you, but I always struggle with the color order when it comes to candy corn. So I don't know what it says about me, but every single year I have to look it up. Is it orange, yellow, white, or what's the order? So hopefully I got it correct. It's yellow, orange, and white. So use your scribe to distribute the icing evenly. And then immediately after, I'm not waiting for the icing to crust. You can wait for it to crust if you are concerned that you're going to mess up that nice yellow border that you made. But I'm going to squeeze my piping bag just a bit more so more icing is coming out when I go around the yellow edge. So I don't have to go there with my scribe tool. If there is a gap, you're going to have to go in there with the scribe tool. And oftentimes, because the next section is still wet, you can mess it up and that line is not going to be as nice and clean. However, if it happens that it gets little, uneven, what you can do after the icing dries, you can go over with piping consistency icing and you can make an outline, maybe dip it in sanding sugar, and that's going to hide any kind of imperfections. So now once we are done with this section, we have to let the candy corn pattern crust so we can work on the ears. I'm going to spread a thin layer of dark tan color on the middle part of the ear. We're going to achieve really nice dimension using this technique. And now that the candy corn is still crusting, but we can do the bottom part of the bear's legs. I'm using dark tan color, and this can be 20-second consistency because it's a small area and you are able to smooth the icing without it crusting too quickly. And it's also going to contribute to slightly puffy look if you're using thicker icing. I'm going to let this section crust, and then we can do the adjacent sections. Those are going to be iced with slightly lighter shade of tan color. And folks, if you don't want to use tan or brown color for your bear, you can use gray, black, purple. I think because this is a Halloween themed cookie, you can use any Halloween color or even non-Halloween. If you want, you can use maybe, just crossed my mind to use electric green. I wonder how that would look. Or gray, black. Like I said, purple. I think I'm kind of leaning towards the purple. Purple might be a nice bright color combination for this, because purple goes well with yellow and white and the orange. So now using the lighter tan, we can fill this area. For this, when you're doing this section, make sure that the candy corn, the yellow particularly, it's crusted over, so it's not going to blend together. Now with the scribe tool, pull the icing around so it's flush with that bottom section. And now, since the candy corn pattern is crusted, we can also add the arms. Make sure that you use light tan. And you can use 20 to 15 seconds. We're going to need 15 seconds for the face. But for the arms, you can get away with 20 seconds because it's a small area and you can easily smooth it and distribute it quickly so it's not crusting. Sometimes when you're using 20-second consistency on a larger cookie, you're not quick enough or fast enough, it can start crusting and it can be difficult to smooth it. So usually I reserve 20 seconds for smaller areas or mini cookies and things like that, royal icing transfers or small details. Now we're going to wait for the arms, for the very top section, to be crusted over before we can do the head. But we can start working on the ears because those are not going to touch the candy corn area. So I'm using zigzag line in the ear area and letting it crust because that's going to have a very fine, narrow icing on top. So I want to make sure that I mitigate cratering. But now we can do the head and all the nice wet on wet decorating. I'm using 15-second consistency here. And I'm gonna use one of my favorite decorating techniques, that's wet on wet. Basically, the base is still wet and we're piping fluid icing on top of it, and that icing should be about same or similar consistency as your base, so it's going to sink in and create seamless layer. So I'm using darker tan here, piping a large round. Now you can see my icing is about 20 seconds here, or it's slightly thicker than my base because it's not going down. So I'm using my scribe tool, using a sewing motion up and down to make sure that it sinks into the base. Now we can add the black. If your icing that you're adding onto the wet base, it's too runny, you're risking a crater in your icing. So make sure that it's about the same consistency. It can be slightly thicker, but not too much, because then it's going to be hard for it to sink in. Now we can add the white dot for the reflection. For the tiny dots, I like to use my scribe tool and pick a small amount of icing straight from a piping bag. Just give the bag a tiny little squeeze, let some icing come out, and pick it up with the tip of the scribe tool. And there you've got yourself beautiful eyes. Now, once the head is crusted, about 20-30 minutes, we can finish the ears. I'm using tan color, light tan color here. Outline and then fill that in. For the ears, I suggest using 20-second consistency. I'm using the same consistency for the outline as I am for the fill. And now as I'm filling this in, I'm squeezing the piping bag just a bit more so more icing comes out, and then use your scribe tool, smooth it and distribute it so it's evenly spread out across this tiny little narrow section. Folks, if you prefer picture tutorials, you can find a picture tutorial on my blog honeyyolas.com. Link is in the description box under the video. Now, to make this teddy bear a little more friendlier, we're going to add some blush onto the cheeks using pink petal dust. This is edible petal dust, and I'm using food only paintbrush. I love Wilton paintbrushes, and you want to apply this onto the dry icing. It's very important that the icing is fully dry. Now remove the excess. And now remember those transfers we made? Oh, isn't it cute? Adorable, adorable cookies. I love these. Now I've got some sprinkles, and I thought it would be cute to include some pumpkin shapes on the feet or paws or whatever you want to call these on this cookie. Now this is an optional decoration, but I really love how these turned out with these cute little pumpkins. So I'm using orange icing, about this can be 20 to 15 second consistency, and we're gonna ice the base, and then using wet on wet we're gonna create cute little jack-o'-lantern. So with black you wanna pipe triangles for the eyes, or you can do rounds, whatever you prefer, and then make the mouth. I'm going to immediately dust this with sugar. You can use granulated sugar for this actually, or if you have sanding sugar you can use sanding sugar. I find that granulated sugar worked better for this particular design because I wanted to still kind of be able to see the pattern, the eyes and the mouth clearly. I didn't want to have large sugar crystals there. So while it's wet, once you are done shaping and accentuating all the corners, you can dust it with sugar, and it's going to add really nice texture. So I've got the base covered in granulated sugar. You can see how fine that is. Now let's clean up the very top, and we can use piping consistency green icing and make the stem. To make the stem, I'm starting with kind of like a large dot and shaping it into a teardrop shape. It's a prolongated teardrop shape. So I'm starting with piping a dot and then slowly moving it into more tapered end at the very top and there. Once this dries, you can attach it onto the bear with a little bit of icing on the back. And there you have it, teddy bear cookies with a candy corn twist. These are perfect for Halloween, not too scary, super cute. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.